Hello, my name is Dr. Maya Byfield. My business is The Phenomenal STEMist. I'm so excited to be here in Orange County because it's where I live. I live in Apopka, Florida. And I decided to make this business because I saw a need for underrepresented students to be successful in STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, math. And the best way I can do that is just provide products for parents to prepare them, whether it's a book or online STEM camps or just video podcasting. My goal is to transform this community, especially those who are underrepresented. And the way to do that is to help parents understand their children's minds and basically develop them at different stages of their lives to be prepared for a successful STEM career. Thank you so much. That's why I'm here. Hey, 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 it's the Phenomenal STEMist. Hello, everyone. How are you? Hope everybody is doing well. Good evening, good evening, good evening. How are you? All right, I have a lot to talk about, so I really want to get into it. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. Before I go into what I want to talk about, since we're supporting Black owned businesses today, do me a favor and support the Phenomenal STEMist. It's on Amazon today, it's on Amazon now. Um, Always subscribe. Trying to get to 500 subscribers by the end of the year. I'm adding things slowly. Like I probably get a subscriber once a week. That's not what I need, right? I need about once a day. Once a day. All right. So please click the subscribe button. And of course, if you are interested in July's STEM camp, now is the time. I have multiple types of STEM camps. One included is the Black History STEM camp. It literally talks about figures in African American figures in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. You're able to talk to your children and teach your children about these figures as a way of modeling. So, all kinds of STEM camps in terms of learning biology, chemistry, physics at the youngest of ages, pre K to the 12th grade. So, all right. That homework is complete. Let's jump into what I want to talk about today, and that is a new era of freedom. A new era of freedom. So I'm gonna go up a little bit in the background. I'm gonna go in the background, and you should be able to see something that I created for last week. Juneteenth in STEM, a new era of freedom. So we're going to give a little backdrop for all those who don't understand or know about what Juneteenth is. I want to give a history, a 400-year history. All right, a 400-year history. Back in 2019 was 400 years of enslavement. The first arrival of Africans on the shores of America for enslavement happened in August of 1619. August of 1619. So I made a timeline of the historical contributions by people of African heritage in the context of Juneteenth. All right. So first, the arrival, August 16th, 1619. Enslaved Africans landed on or in Hampton, Virginia via the White Lion, our first ancestors as for African Americans in this country. And they were traded for supplies. This is the first time they were traded for supplies. Those of you who are watching, do me a favor and greet me. Tell me where you're watching from. And that lasted till 1863. That lasted till 1863, right? So let's do the mathematics. This is STEM. 1863 minus 1619 is 240 years of slavery before the government declared the Emancipation Proclamation. It really wasn't the government, it was the President of the United States at the time, Abraham Lincoln. And this is because the correct Confederate States were not working well with him, and they seceded from the Union, and he created this Emancipation Proclamation. Um, the listen what it says: the Confederate States, the slaves in the Confederate States in rebellion. See, they were in rebellion. They had seceded from the Union when he was voted, when he was elected President of the United States. The Southern states seceded from the Union. They became rebels, and so he pronounced the slaves free. This is more of a proclamation. This was not ratified in Congress as a law. This required a civil war. So a civil war lasted 2 years, 1865. Finally, in April of 1865, Robert Lee surrendered. He surrendered in Virginia, same place where the first slaves were shipped. He surrendered, but even though he surrendered in 1865 of April, not all slaves knew that they were free. They were free from 1863. But the Civil War was what made it more clear in 1865. And still, people did not know that they were free from 1863. All right. So the 13th Amendment is ratified in December of 1865. 1865, the Congress finally ratifies it. So now it's sealed in a constitutional law. And it's at that point in December of 1865 that General Gordon Granger goes to the people of Texas and informs the slaves that they are free. So they were free from January 1, 1863. It took 2 years of war and a ratification of that amendment, and finally everybody knew that they were free. So the following, and they were happy, everybody's excited in December 6, 1865. And the following year, June 19th of 1866, special freedmen in Texas organized the first Jubilee Day to celebrate that freedom that everybody knew in December of 1865. And they called it a Juneteenth celebration. That is the history. And it wasn't until hundreds of years later. All right, let's see what the number is. 2021 minus 1866 is what, 155 years that there's Juneteenth a national Independence Day, because in July 4th everybody wasn't free. In 1776 we were well off into slavery. Emancipation Proclamation hadn't been done yet. All right, so there is the history of Juneteenth. Now you know why we celebrate this day, because everybody didn't know that they were free until a certain time. So What is the legacy of freedom of slavery? I'm gonna have a nice talk about this. I'm doing, uh, a new era of freedom, something that I've been musing about. I think about the legacy of American slavery, right? What is the legacy of American slavery? Number one, it was involuntary in nature. People were forced to be in servitude without their consent. Number two, it was hereditary, meaning children that were born to slaves were enslaved, even if they were born through the rape of their master. They were still slaves. If you had any parent who was a slave, you were a slave. Hereditary. Number three, it was lifelong. You were born a slave, you died a slave, and you stayed property of your owners. Literally, like even if your owners died, you were passed off in wills to people. Okay, you were just property, lifelong property. This is the legacy of American slavery. It was brutal in its conditions. People were physically and sexually abused. Women were raped. Men were mutilated, castrated, abused. It had a terrible legacy. Slavery does. American slavery, especially, well, all slavery. It is a terrible legacy. Number five, they didn't have access to basic needs like food, clothing, and shelter. They had the worst food. You think about all the food that is great in New Orleans, crawfish and catfish and jambalaya. These are actually the worst type of shellfish that the slaves just made taste good. Chitlins, meaning you weren't even allowed to have any portion of the meat of the pig. So you were able to get the dirty, nasty intestines. The intestines where feces is found. That's the only part of the pig that slaves could eat for themselves. Okay, every other part, the best parts of the meats, were given to the master and the master's family. They had the worst type of food. Now they made it taste good, but they had the worst type of food. Um, Slaves were typically prohibited from learning. They could not read, they could not write, they definitely could not do mathematics. This is not the history or the legacy of Black people. This is the legacy of American slavery. Black people were excellent readers and writers and mathematicians. Black people from Africa were brought over and placed into slavery. And it is a terrible legacy. American slavery has a terrible legacy. All right. Hey Hyacinth, what's going on? And this is very important for people of descents of other nations. I really don't think that people of Caribbean, Asian, Latino, I really don't think they truly understand the brutality of the legacy of American slavery. And I want you to sit there with that, um, because the next slide demonstrates people's view. So here's a question from Pew Research. Views of racial gaps. So think about this. This happened for 400 years, and it wasn't, and I'm not even talking about Jim Crow, mass incarceration that happened after. I'm just talking about the legacy of slavery, right? Think about that kind of trauma happened to a group of people. Think about that kind of trauma that happened in that group of people and expecting them, that was just, 155 years ago. You understand? This country is a very young. And it's a question. It says percentage of each group saying the legacy of slavery affects the position of Black people in America today. Look at what Black people think. 60% of Black people feel that the legacy of slavery has a great impact on them. A great impact. And then 25% feel like it's a fair amount. So between 85% feel like it's a lot. While only 6 to 9%, basically 15%, so it's 85 to 15% of African Americans or black people feel that slavery has a great impact on what's happening right now. Look at everybody else. Look at Caucasians. Only 26% think that slavery had a great impact on what's going on with African Americans today. Only 32%, right? So basically almost half and half. Half of white people feel like, oh, all that I just described, oh, it don't have much to do with what's going on with them today. Look at Asian. Asian are the closest to us as black people are Asian. 33%, 35%. So that's a good 68% of people versus 30. Everybody else is worse. Look at Latinos. Even Latinos don't even feel it is that bad. Right? So only black people feel that slavery really has a bad impact on us. I mean, not only, but I mean, everybody else is probably, I guess, 70-30, 2/3 or less. And don't let me get started with the representation in terms of politics. Look at Republicans and Republican leaning people. Republican leaning people only 17% of them believe that slavery, what I just described to you, rape and mutilation and starvation and a legacy of lifelong hereditary servitude with no choice, that doesn't have an impact on African Americans today when it only happened 200 years ago. It only ended 200 years ago. Democrats, of course, much more. Wow. Wow. So I gave you the legacy of slavery and how we are in a gap in terms of what people view, how people view slavery on an impact on African Americans. How are we as African Americans going to progress if Caucasians, Asians, and Latinos, every other demographic, don't have a strong belief that slavery had a great impact on our life? That but anyway, I digress. Let's move on to how we heal from this. It has a great impact on our life today. I really, really believe that. I'm a part of the 85%. I'm a part of the 59% that believe that there's a strong impact of American slavery and slavery in general on black people in this country and even everybody else. So how do we heal? If we had forced labor, right? Then we have to have economic empowerment. Like, how do we heal? How do we heal? We don't just get rid of slavery and then just say, okay, now go for it. No, there has to be some remedies to African Americans in order for healing to come from that terrible legacy. So I told you that they were forced to do work and thought of and not paid for it. So now pay me. Pay my people. Economic empowerment for communities, not payday loans and not financial illiteracy and not 0.87 for every dollar a white man makes. A black man makes 0.87 87 cents to a dollar that the white counterpart makes. They were working for free. It's time to get some economic empowerment. Economic empowerment. No more payday loans. No more financial illiteracy. No more differences in wages. Let's see what people have to say. My mother says slavery still lingers. It manifests in different ways. That's right. It still exists, just in different ways. Hyacinth says It's crazy. You grow up thinking in a certain way and don't even know why. The legacy is deep. We have to break the generational curses. We know it does impact us, so we do what's best for us. Yeah, we have to recognize it, but not only us, people around us, white people, Latinos, Asians, Caucasians, Latinos, Asians, right? Everybody has to recognize that slavery has a terrible impact on our people and there needs to be remedies for it. Number two, if there's an issue with building families, it's generational. It was hereditary. That's the legacy. It passed from generation to generation. Then there needs to be generational healing. There needs to be healthy family building where the children in those families aren't just turned out as slaves, but now they are empowered. Not 70% single parent homes that we're seeing today. We need healthy families to heal from the legacy of freedom, not what we see today. We were known as property, we were passed on in wills. So, how do we heal from that terrible legacy? We need to own property. We need to have equitable access to the ownership of property, not redlining, not discriminatory housing practices, right? What's redlining? You put black people in a certain red line and allow the property values to plummet and then not allow them to buy houses outside of that red line, right? You're messing with people's ownership and worth and wealth when you do that. Net worth and wealth. That's how you fight against the legacy of slavery. Trauma-based therapy, not police brutality. Every black person needs to be in trauma-based therapy. There's a legacy of American slavery. There's a legacy of slavery in the diaspora. They need therapy. Right now, there's more police brutality. So there's continuous brutality, continuous abuse, rather than the healing that's required. In this case, trauma-based therapy. Well, how do we heal from American slavery? You ask me. We have to have equitable access to the basic needs like food, clothing, and shelter, not food deserts. That's what we have. We have food deserts. We don't need food deserts. We need equitable access to basic needs like food, clothing, and shelter. That's how you heal from the legacy of slavery. You do the opposite. What's my point? We got to do the opposite of what has happened to African Americans and Caribbean Americans, all those who have a legacy of enslavement. Lastly, they were allowed to read, write, and do math. Slaves weren't. So how do you heal from that brutal system of slavery? I mean, even Caribbean Americans didn't have this issue, right? American slavery did this foolishness. They would found dead if they were learning to read. So you have to give equitable access to education. People must learn to read, write, right? Not limited resources for education. So we have not healed from the legacy of slavery because we have not implemented the healing. There is a great impact on African Americans, because we have not provided these, in my opinion, 6 things as how do I say, basically as a repellent to the legacy of slavery. We just keep the process going in different, as my mother says, it has morphed to payday loans, to single parent homes, to redlining, to police brutality, right? And mass incarcerations, to food deserts, to limited opportunities for education. It has morphed. Hyacinth says, yup, they need to recognize, but the system is set for it to remain. Slavery is still here, but as your mom says, in a different way. It has morphed. Yes, the antidote to the legacy of American slavery are these things, not what it has morphed to. All right. So, what's my answer to what do I believe we can do? Well, we can't fix everything, so I'm just going to stick to the first one. There's all those things need to happen, but I'm going to stick to the first one, and it's phenomenal financial freedom, and I wanted to talk about this tonight, right? Economic empowerment. It's one of the six. Economic empowerment, right? Since slavery was an economically efficient system of production capable of producing enormous amounts of wealth for a sect of the population, we must reverse that system. How do you do that? By including the economic empowerment of the sons and daughters of slaves. Freedom comes with economic empowerment. Economic empowerment. And so, how do you empower sons and daughters of slaves in 2023? Now, you look at this, I don't know if you can see it that well, but according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median income for African Americans or blacks in this country is $32,000. That is poverty, okay? Especially now with inflation. This was back in 2019, I believe. So it's probably a little bit more, but still, $32,000 is not a lot. $38,000 for Latinos. This is $20,000 less than whites. But if you put those same blacks and Latinos in STEM careers, their median income is not $32,000, but $75,000. Hold up, let me do the math. This is science, technology, engineering, and math tonight. $70,000 minus 32,229. People with STEM degrees, black people with STEM degrees make $42,000 more than black people without STEM degrees. Listen, and the gap is much less, meaning a black man who makes $75,000 in STEM is only 85,000. He's competing $85,000 with a white man. The gap is smaller, and there is significantly higher amounts of wealth for black people with a science, technology, engineering, and math degree. Right now, whites and Asians, I know you can see it, but the first long bar, the gray represents the population of the person, right? In the country. Whites are about 70% of the population. And there are more whites in STEM than whites in the population. What we call overrepresented. Same thing for Asians, even more so. Asian Americans are only 11% of the population, or 5.5% of the population. Meanwhile, almost 15% of the population in STEM are Asians. They are extremely overrepresented. There are more Asians in STEM than in the actual population of Asian Americans in the country. And it flips for black people. Black people, only 5%, I think. I can't read it. My eyes are going bad. Hold on. 6.4%. No, it's not going bad. It's just small. 6.4% of black people are in STEM compared to the 12% population. You see? Latinos, same thing. There are way more Latinos in the population, but not much in STEM. There is a gap. There is an underrepresentation of black people in science degrees. Can you imagine if let's say there are 12% of African Americans in the country. If I move from being 6%, but I increase it to 12% in STEM to just match. If I have 12% of black people, then I would have 12% of black STEM. Can you imagine the economic boom? All those people will be making $75,000 a year versus $32,000 a year. Can you imagine a whole bunch of black people start making $75,000 a year? Can you see what will happen to the economics of our community. We gotta get to a level of economic empowerment, and STEM is one of the ways to do that. Right? Let's look at the top African American billionaires. Let's look at the top African American billionaires. There's Robert Smith, David Stewart, Oprah Winfrey. These are the top African American. Robert Smith has a net worth of $6.7 billion. He's the richest African American in the country. David Stewart, I'm not talking about Africans or other black people. I'm talking about African Americans, parents who grew up in this country whose parents were slaves. Robert Smith is the richest black American, $6.7 billion. David Stewart, $5.8 billion. And shout out to my homegirl Oprah Winfrey. She is the richest black woman, African American woman, and the third richest African American. She has a net worth of $2.6 billion. All three of them are business executives. They're in finance, they are in business. They are entrepreneurs, they run their own companies. Economic empowerment. You hear me? Number one. And two out of the three, Robert Smith, the richest African American, the most wealthiest African American, has a bachelor's in chemical engineering, y'all. He is a STEM major. Number two, David Stewart. He is chairman, CEO, founder of Worldwide Technology, the largest or one of the largest black owned businesses. It is a technology company, IT, information technology, and chemical engineering. 2/3 and 100% of the top two, both of them the top two, they're STEM. They're STEM. Meanwhile, there is a huge underrepresentation of African Americans in STEM. So what I'm saying is the new era of freedom is business and STEM. Business and STEM. Okay? So what is some progress? What's some progress? Okay. Let's think about progress, right? There's been some progress, right? There's mentorship programs, there's scholarships, there has been outreach for STEM. For instance, my Leaps and Bounds program at Seminole State targets underrepresented minorities in STEM to provide for them full tuition, mentorship, right? So the National Science Foundation has made a lot of progress in trying to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in STEM through monies, mentorships, and other types of outreach. Right? We're talking about progress made to what I believe lead to an economic empowerment, which is one of the main pillars that I feel that could lead to freedom of African Americans in this country. I'm not saying it's the only way, but it's one of the major ways, right? African American workers in STEM with at least a bachelor's degree has increased from 6 to 7.3%. So it has increased. Look at all these beautiful black people here. My favorite is George Washington Carver, Percy Julian. These are several African Americans that are in either science, technology, engineering, and math, and it has grown. I'm not gonna lie, it has grown. However, there are some challenges. There are some challenges to this economic empowerment by increasing the STEM degrees. Number one, there is a lack of balanced representation due to systemic biases, discrimination, and limited opportunities for mentorship and networking. What am I saying? Look at black versus Asian versus white, right? Look at the difference between men and women. The men are the green, the women are the blue. Look at the imbalance. Asian and white people pretty much are 50-50, which with sometimes skewed to the women, but not significantly. So meaning white men have masters, bachelors, PhDs, MDs, white women have it on a 50-50 level. Asian, same thing. You know, a lot of people talk about Asian women and how they're so yo, I went to graduate school and the majority of the scientists that I worked with, the postdoctoral fellows that I worked with were Chinese women, okay? Who were no joke. They were modern, you know, not these stereotypical um stereotypical entities that are trying to change the dynamics of the women in our community. Black community, 60 to 65% are women in STEM. And that's a problem. You know why that's a problem? Because women make less than men. So that's an economic impact. You understand? Meaning, if a black woman makes 60 cents to a white man's dollar, if they're hardly, and if it's not even, meaning if it's not 50-50, 50% black women, 50% black men, at least if we had more black men in STEM, then that gap would change. There would be black men in STEM would make more money than black women in STEM. And since black men in STEM make more money, there's a more bigger economic impact of having equitable men and women in science, technology, engineering, and math. This lack of balanced representation is not good for our families in terms of just having people to marry, and it's not good economically. Challenge number one, lack of balanced representation. Number two, stereotypes and biases that can influence perceptions of the individuals in the STEM field. There are a lot of microaggressions. You look at a black man in STEM and you're like, wow, you don't seem like a typical black person. You speak well. Or you talk to a dark-skinned woman, oh, you're so pretty for a dark-skinned girl. These type of stereotypes, these types of, we call them microaggressions, hinder African Americans from staying in STEM fields in college. And if they drop out of STEM fields in college, they won't have STEM jobs. They don't have STEM jobs in adulthood. They make $30,000 versus $75,000 in median. It's economically destructive, these challenges, right? Here's another one. The lack of funding and diversity and inclusion initiatives. We have states that have shut down DEI. And how is it that black people are silent? Black people are silent when states have shut down DEI. These initiatives were specifically for STEM fields many of the times to cause that gap to change. I just gave you the example. Imagine if you were making $32,000 a year, but you get a degree in STEM and now make $75,000 a year. You bring that $75,000 a year to your community. There's a boom. There's an economic boom when you increase STEM. That's why I'm here. Why you think I'm here? Why you think I keep doing these podcasts and writing these books? Right? Because it's for economic empowerment, which will lead to freedom. So, what do we need to do about it? Here are the challenges. What do we need to do about it? Number one, the first thing that we need to do is we need to let them know. What do I mean? Educate and support African Americans about STEM careers. That's why every month I have Phenomenal STEMist. First Sunday, we call it Phenomenal First Sundays. Unless it's a holiday weekend, I got to do it on the second weekend, right? Phenomenal First Sundays. where I have tons and tons of people. I have about 50 interviews of engineers and technologists and physicians and next week I'm going to have a software entrepreneur, a computer entrepreneur. I'm going to have a physician's assistant the following month. I'm going to have a perfusionist the following month. Like, I have it all lined up. These are excellent STEM based careers that can economically empower our community. But you got to let them know about it and stop spreading these lies that telling our people to not go to college, to do X, Y, and Z instead. That's what the gap is. That's what leads to the gap, y'all. I'm not saying go to college and major in anything, but you can't tell people not to go to school. And they target black men. Look at all those targets. They're usually black men. Just don't go to college, do trades. Trades can be good, but there needs to be balance. Meaning, yes, some of you do trades, but I need at least 50% of the graduates to be males in STEM, software engineers, electrical engineers. There needs to be balance. There's a imbalance. And another thing, many of the jobs that we're putting our males to are not sustainable in terms of age. A software engineer can be a software engineer till he's 80. A tradesman, it's difficult for him to do it for the long haul, right? So you'll make a lot of money as a painter at 20 and 30, but when you're 50, it may be a little tougher to get those same opportunities. Meanwhile, as you age with certain types of STEM degrees, it gets better. Nobody thinks about that. And number two, many of the jobs that we're pushing our men to are going to be replaced by robots. And it's a concerted effort to do that for fast money in the beginning, but in the next 20 years, they won't exist for our men. The imbalance in STEM degrees and business in general, entrepreneurship and executive leadership of our people will lead us to a permanent underclass. So we must educate them and we must shun anyone who tries not to let them know about this information. All right. Number two, call to action. Let them grow. This is for my LinkedIn people who are watching. You who are leaders, who are leaders that are not African American. You are Caucasian American. You are Asian American. You have to understand the legacy of slavery, what it has done to African Americans. And you must provide opportunities to heal from this legacy. Provide opportunities for training, especially when it comes to STEM, the latest artificial intelligence and robotic innovations. Things like data science and artificial intelligence and machine learning engineers and data labeling professionals and hardware and software specialists, especially for AI. Like, these are hands-on training opportunities that I need you to seek out historically black colleges and universities and find the best and the brightest, because they're out there, and give them opportunities. It is necessary. The legacy of slavery has is a sin stain on our country, and we must be healed by proactively providing opportunities for sons and daughters of the slaves that were brought here in this country. It has passed on. It has a legacy, and the only way it's healed is through granting those opportunities. So if you have a robotics company, look for an intern that's a black man or woman. Like, actively seek out. And why are you saying that? Is it not fair? There's a sin stain of slavery and a legacy of slavery that deserves to be healed. Reparations are in order. Absolutely. I'm not ashamed. Seek them out. Provide them opportunities. It will be beneficial for them, it'll be beneficial for their community, and overall it will be beneficial for America. They're entitled to it. They're owed it. Yep, I'm saying it because I showed you the brutality of slavery, and the overall impact that has been passed down through Jim Crow, mass incarceration, and the like. Number 16, give them us free. Lastly, let them show. Once they are educated, once they are trained, it is time that you hire them. And let them show you the great things that they can do. Trust me on this one. A properly educated African American will have already knows. We call it the black tax. We already know we have to do twice as much. We already know we have to do twice as much than our counterparts just to be thought of as average. Black hirees work, and they work hard, and they work doubly hard for themselves and their community. Give them a shot. You hire them. You hire them. After you educate them, you tell them about the information. You don't try to trick them about going off into some other job that you know is not going to exist in the next 15 years. But you actually train, educate them in the things that were going to be important, especially in things of STEM. And then you hire them. Watch them show you. Watch them show you the best. They will. They will. All right. Well, almost done. I am here to be involved in really, really empowering. I really believe that financial empowerment and economic empowerment through financial literacy and specifically STEM degrees will provide an economic boom for our community. So all I can do is my part through podcasts like this. As I said before, I provide role modeling by interviewing lots of STEM majors for your kids to watch. So look out for it. If you just go on, remind you just to go subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you'll find all the videos that I've done to try to teach people about science, technology, engineering, and math careers, right? Number one. Number two, I have a book here, right? This book goes from the womb to the university in training training parents how to prepare their kids in science, technology, engineering. A lot of the times, you got to start young. You know that graph that I showed where it was like 65% women, 30% men? What is causing such a disparity where only 35% of African American men go on and get a bachelor's, a master's, or a PhD in science, technology, engineering, and math? They are they are hindered from it from young. From their in childhood, they are disproportionately left put out of the classroom, suspended disproportionately for similar behaviors. Many of their teachers are afraid of them. They don't learn math and science at a young age, and they're afraid of it. And so by the time they get to college, many, though they may want to be a physician or they may want to be an engineer, they struggle with the classwork. Why? Because they're not prepared. So this book is to prepare you, parent, on how to prepare their kid at every age level. So you can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon, right? And of course, I have STEM camps that promote biology, physics, chemistry, teaching it from a young age and continue learning it. Or I have a Black History STEM camp, which really teaches kids about Black people who have succeeded in STEM. whatever type of camp that you want, you can find on www.phenomenalstemist.com. You can find me in multiple places to help prepare our community. That's my goal. My goal is to do what I can, and all I can do is teach people. That's my gift. So I'm teaching people through books. I'm teaching people through podcasts. I'm teaching people through STEM camps. If you don't have a GED, I got a free GED program for you, right? Like, this is what's necessary to prepare our people for the future. For the future. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. I'm here to answer questions. You can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to support me. I see some questions out here. I'm gonna close my thanks guys for watching. Really appreciate it. I see a few of you watching. Paul asks, what is your thoughts about Web3 and the anonymity of developers and builders? Do you think the industry will help level the playing field when it comes to race, gender, and ethnicity? Absolutely. Absolutely, Paul. I think I met you at Black Orlando Tech. I really, really believe, I said this before, like, we are in the era of leveling the playing field because of the internet. We are, and the internet, and combined with Web3 and ease of access of fintech, being able to get finances from people very easily, leaving the middleman, and the level of globalization on combined with that, like, we this is the time of leveling the playing field. The key thing is they gotta know. And so, if you ask the average African American about Web3, how many really understand what Web3 is? How many? A lot of the times we get engaged in fads, So we learn about Chat GPT, but how many of us really understand what artificial intelligence and machine learning really is? Right? Not just Chat GPT so you could cheat on a test, but artificial intelligence and machine learning, where you can plug in data from free access all over the world, and put the data in a program like big ML, big machine learning, which has a free part to it, and you can look at different types of um patterns of the data, and you can make decisions about what you can do for your community based on that patterns. For instance, like, I'm teaching my students about prostate cancer, and we're putting data into programs like big machine learning and Microsoft Excel and other types of programs, and we're seeing patterns. We're seeing case fatality rates more so in young African American men, not necessarily African American men in general, but more towards the young ones. So imagine you learn this through data analysis, and then you make a business decision to get a medical bus that goes through the neighborhood, through barbershops and neighborhoods, to get prostate checks, or you can get the pharmaceutical companies or other types of medical companies to support this medical bus, and the people who drive that type of bus, to engage the community and to lower the prostate cancer levels of young Black men. You combine research, data, analytics, technology with business. And you do that because you have a knowledge of these industries, developers and builders. So the answer is yeah. Unfortunately, I can't even get the knowledge base. That is the key thing, is that let them know. And because, for instance, you were at Paul, you who are not, you are not an African American man, but you cared enough to come to engage African Americans, right? It levels the playing field by letting us know. That's one of the main calls to action, right? Let them know, let them grow, let them show. Yeah, yeah. That's how I feel like we'll get a new era of freedom. Just like those slaves did not know in 1865 that they were free from 1863. They did not know, but when they knew, then they had a celebration on Juneteenth. And I believe the new era of freedom for African Americans, where we can level the playing field, is number one. Number one, um, what did I say? To level the playing field. What I missed? I'm sorry, I missed something because my battery. It just showed that my battery's about to die. Yeah, economic empowerment through number one, STEM, and number two, executive leadership, business executives. Though I really am. I'm a believer in it. Paul says, I recruited a Seminole State alumni as a judge for NASA Mines alumni, Dominique Boone, who did a great job in helping to analyze and critique our undergrad projects. Awesome, Paul. Awesome. Thank you so much. Listen, good night, everybody. I think those are all the questions. I really, really hope that we can let them know, let them grow, let them show. That's the call to action, specifically in fields that are relevant for the future, and many of which are STEM based. You guys have a good night. Thanks so much for watching, taking the time for watching. Happy Juneteenth, and I hope we all are free.